Hey, it's Jeremy again, and welcome back to Blender for Designers. So now we're going to be taking that can I created in that previous tutorial, and we're going to be setting it up as like a product shot and rendering it. So let's get started. So here I have the can I built in that last video. Let's get to rendering it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I did before. I'm going to put another 3D view up here so I can see what I'm doing. And then I'm probably gonna do a front view, kind of like this, right on there. So I'm gonna go to camera, align camera to view, and you can see the camera moved. So I think the camera's a little extreme, so I'm gonna change the focal length to 50 millimeters, and that means I'm gonna need to back up the camera a bit and raise it up. I'm actually gonna get rid of the side panels here and bring them up here where they're more useful. So I'm gonna raise this up till it's exactly level. Alright, so we're going to get exactly level, and I'm going to put the cursor in the center, hit Alt-Home to reset everything. And then obviously this is out of the frame now, but we're going to fix that. In fact, actually let me just go ahead and fix that. So that's out of the frame, so we're going to peel back a little bit, and then there we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add like a white cyc. That's a white backdrop that cycs up. That's what you constantly see in photo studios. So to make that, we're going to add a plane. And we're going to call this cyc. And while I'm here, I'm going to call this cylinder can, just so we can keep track of what we have. So I'm going to hit cyc, scale it up quite a bit, and then I'm going to tab into edit mode. And I'm going to extrude backwards, which is Y, ways back. And I'm going to create a bunch of loops, loop cuts there. All right, and then so those are so I can pull this thing up. So I'm going to take this edge and I can pull it up. But if I just pull it up, I can't. That's not a good cyc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it up doing what's called proportional editing. And that one is this thing, proportional editing. And I'm going to do it sharp. You have different options. And so now as you can see, when I pull this up, it basically just pulls up. But if I use my scroll wheel, I can increase that little circle. And see, that little circle will drag these other points with me, and so I can pull it up and actually create a cyc. So if you look at the right, you can see that there's an actual cyc being created. So that's cool. Yeah, that's good. And then we can move this a little bit that way to, kind of complete the thing. Let's go to orthographic here. There we go, a nice even cyc there. And we can hit tab, smooth it out. And we can also scale it in X just to make sure it occupies the entire screen. All right, so now let's start lighting this. Let's give it a material first. So that is white. We can just give it a regular old diffuse material. Just a white cyc, no reason to have anything fancy on there. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna add a plane. Bring it up, bring it back. We'll call this plane light. It's not light yet, but it will be. So we're gonna scale it up a bit, and then scale it in X, so a nice long thing. And then I'm actually gonna go top view here, even further up like this, and then move it out, and then up, and RX, actually even a little bit higher, and a little bit further back. All right, so now let's add an emission, a material to it that can be emission, that can emit light, so it wants to be an emission material, and let's set that to 5. So nice and bright. And we'll call this backlight. We'll call this cyc light. All right, cool. And then, all right, so one thing I actually want to do too, I'm going to hit 3 to go into side view. I can't even see the cyc, and I'm going to back off a little bit. One thing I want to do is actually create like a shield between the light and the can. It actually looks okay, but if I want to brighten it, I want to make sure I'm not creating too much light behind it. So I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate, and I'm going to do that in Y. And then I want to rotate in X. Scale this up even further. Of course, this is now another light, but we don't want another light. We want another dark. So I'm going to create a new solid, call this dark, diffuse, and we'll make it black. And this will actually be nice too, because it'll cast a nice black reflection on a few things. So I'm going to use material mode here so we can actually see what these look like. There we go. All right. So there we got our cyc light, and we can keep these kind of together. We can actually even Turn this up to 8. So yeah, you get a nice bright light, but it's not casting a shadow. Increase that a bit. All right, so that's the cyc, but how do we want to actually light the can? Well, that's easy. So we grab another plane, mesh plane. Okay, we're going to scale that up again. I'm going to bring that, and this is going to be like a nice overhead light. This is going to be a pretty even thing. So scale X. And then just wandering around here, RX. So you can always keep, one eye on the layout. I like to keep it pretty small, as you probably guessed. Unfortunately, it's a little hard to see in the video, so I'm going to zoom out a bit here. So I'm going to create another material, make that an emission, and I'm going to call this light 2. And we don't need much emission, like maybe 2 is probably fine. Okay, in fact, I think we can even put this a little bit up. Yeah, there you go. Okay, and then I'm going to go to here, duplicate this again, move it over here, and I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go RY90, so we can kind of create. I'm going to create these kind of strip bank type things. Or what you would use in a photo studio would be like a strip of Let's use it much lower, like a strip softbox. So you scale Z quite a bit, and then I'm actually going to raise the value here to maybe 3. So I'm going to go back to that top view. I'm just going to rotate this RYY just a little so I can tilt it down, because otherwise you actually won't be able to see it. So I'm going to put that there. So you can see it's creating that nice little highlight there on the left. Going to create another one on the other side, Shift D, and then I'm going to move that in X right over here. And I'm going to rotate this around too. In fact, yeah, now that I'm in top view, I can kind of move this quite a bit around. I want this one about there, maybe a little bit larger, and this one I want a big bit larger. So you get a nice highlight there. Maybe move it out a little bit. So you can keep, you can keep tweaking these with your lights here. And this one I'm gonna move back. This one I want to be a pretty minor contributor. All right, so now tweaking the lighting, I'm actually gonna move. I think I'm moving the cyc itself maybe back. No, maybe scale it in Y, so we can just have a little bit less that's reflecting on the can. So the cyc on the bottom here, it's going to reflect into the can, and I don't want it to reflect that much into the can. I'm actually going to even scoot it back a little bit so that you get a little bit, you get a little bit of a dark kind of in the middle there. And then, all right, cool. So now we can set this thing up for a render. And part of it is I actually don't want to be at 1920 by 1080. I think I want to be at 1440 by 1080. And then that's going to make me move the camera again, of course. And I'm actually move it down just a hair. So I could render this, but one thing I want to do is do one of these cool things they do with product shots. They often add this kind of water to the outside. It's actually not as fashionable as it used to be, but I'm going to show you how to do it, and then I'm going to show you how to have that only as an option. So what we need to do is we need to create some water around here. So I moved over here to the right, and what we're going to do is we're going to add these water droplets, and then the water droplets are all going to go on here using what's called a particle system. So to do that, we actually have to create some water droplets. So to do that, I create a droplet, which looks like a sphere. So I'm going to add a mesh, which is a sphere, UV sphere. And I don't want 32. I'm going to turn that way down to 8. And I'm going to turn this down to like 4. So we don't have much, because we're going to make a bunch of these things, and I don't want too many facets. But in case we do want to render it nicely, I'm going to add a subsurf here, and that's good. And then we're going to smooth it out. And we're going to need to create a water material for it. So go to Materials, add a new material, call it Water. And it's not going to be a diffuse material at all. It's going to be a glass. Now, it's not going to actually be glass, but glass behaves a lot like water, and in the sense that it's clear and it distorts things. And but how much it distorts things is what they call this value, the IOR. And you can actually, it's a physical value that people have actually measured. So we can look that up. We can go to, oh, here we go. Index of refraction of water, which I put into Google, and it says it's it's different at different temperatures, but it's basically 1.34. So we can do 1.34. To be honest, it doesn't really matter that much. And we're going to refine this a little bit, but I'll just keep that as a water material because we want to create not just one circular drop, but we want to create like a longer drop too. So I'm going to call this, instead of sphere, I'm going to call it drop. And then I'm going to duplicate it and then move it in the x-axis. So we have a drop 2 probably, or drop 001. All right, and then I'm going to take this and I'm going to extend this, and I'm going to use my proportional editing, although I'm not going to do it, I'm going to do it more smooth. And then we got to go way down here. Okay, now there we go. Okay, so you can kind of do that proportionally, so we just have a nice little drop effect like that. Yeah, there we go. It does not need to be terribly big. There. So we have a drop. Tab out of that. And then I'm going to do one more. Sorry, moving X. So I'm going to duplicate that again. And I'm going to move this. I'm going to turn off proportional editing. You can hit O to do that. I'm just going to scale this and make this kind of a long, stringy thing. So we get these long kind of, you do see these long kind of stringy things sometimes, you know, like kind of streaks of water. So I'm going to scale down, but then scale in Z. So I'm going to add a little fun little thing called a meta ball. And a meta ball, well, they're these weird things. I'll just have to show you. You have to go add meta ball. And there we go. And these things are kind of weird because basically if I duplicate this, they kind of merge like this, kind of the way water does. So they're kind of nice to have in situations like this. So I'm going to grab one. But actually, one thing I want to do on all of these is I wanted to get rid of that for a sec. I want to make these actually just a bit smaller. So I'm going to save, going to grab all of these and scale 0.5, and then I'm going to apply scale because they actually want them to be exactly half what they are. And this one, these meta balls, they have a certain resolution, and actually that's pretty good the way it is because you can see it kind of just got a little crunky when I did that. But when it's renders, it's going to be higher, just like when these subsurf. It's going to be a higher resolution. It's not going to be 1, it's going to be 2. So I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to duplicate it in X, and you can see they kind of merge. It's fun. Going to duplicate one more, and this one I'm going to make more of a linear one. So you can, there's some options for metaball. So if you tab into it, then there should be, yeah, you can, instead of making this a ball, you can kind of make this an ellipsoid. And then I can increase the Z, so I can kind of create one of those streaks, and I can take the X and Y down to maybe 0.4. Yeah, so then, you know, this will streak in a weird way with that. So that should be cool. It kind of flips in and out, doesn't it? Metaballs are weird. I kind of like them, though. To use all these particles, what we need to do is we need to make what's called a group out of them. So I'm going to select all of them. So I'm going to hit A to unselect everything. Then hit B, select all of them. Then I forget the command for group, so I'm going to look it up. So group. And then let's create new group, Control G. All right, so they're all green when they're groups. So now we have a group. All right, so one thing I forgot to do was to add the water material to the metaballs. But luckily you can edit things when they've already been in a group. In fact, you can edit them once they've already been in a particle as well, which we will do in just a minute. All right, so now we got all these are water. They're in a group. They're ready to be particleized. So the particles are going to be emitted from this thing, from the can. So to do that, you gotta go, I'm gonna widen this out actually. And this little tab over here with all the sparklies, that's a particle system. So you create a new one called particle settings. Now right now we're doing a still, so we just want them to come on, you know, whenever. But I do want to bring up the timeline just to do that. So I'm gonna create another window and do the timeline. And the way the particle system works is it just starts emitting particles just all over the place. on the can. And sometimes it can make them do physics and disappear and all sorts of other stuff. We just want them to appear. So we're going to go to frame 4, which we're already at. We had a timeline set up. And what we're going to do is we're going to have start number. They start at frame 1 and end at frame 200. We want them to aim at frame 2. So we want them all to appear at once. We want them to last as long as is reasonable, so 200 frames. And they're going to emit from faces. We want them, we can try jittered or random. I'll try random. And then we want no physics. We just want them, we don't want them to fall off or do anything funky. We just want them to appear. So no physics. And then here is where we go down and find what we actually want. So we want, oh, here they are, render. So right now it's doing halos, which is a totally different thing. So we want to do the group we just made. And that's called group. There we go. So we're emitting a whole bunch of them now. So we can actually hit play, and we can kind of see them all emit. So it's not very interesting because they'll emit in one frame. So go back to 4, and we can play with the size here. So we can, make them bigger, smaller, whatever, and we can do random size. And we actually want a bunch of different sizes, so I want a pretty high random size. Let's do a 0.8. It's kind of ugly because it's in material mode, but we also noticed that it's not going along fairly evenly. In fact, I'm going to crank up. Oh, right. I'm going to crank up the number so we can see even more. Let's do 5,000. So, yep, now it looks even crazier. So we see it's not actually going very evenly, which is not good, and especially if we do jittered. And the reason that is when I hit tab, you can see that we don't have any geometry here. But we actually do have it because it's being subsurfed there. So to get that there, we can just hit use modifier stack. So there we go. And I can go back to random, and maybe we're going to go down to 4,000. 4,000. And then we also notice that we're getting it like in this crazy places, like on top here, like where we really don't want it. We could put some stuff on top, but not in this orientation. So to do that, we're going to need a vertex group. So going back into tab, I'm actually going to select this, select that, select this, select that, and select this. And we're going to go to our vertex groups, and we're going to create a new one, and we'll call this side, I guess, or face. Let's call it face, assign, hit A, and then just select to check it, and then tab out again. And so now we go back to our particle system. So way down here in vertex groups, we can do density, face. And then that gets a lot in front there and takes it off the top like that. Although we have a few in there, which is weird. I was not really expecting that, but we can take a look at what we got. Hit Shift Z and you can see all this water on here. And it looks kind of funny, doesn't it? A couple reasons it looks funny. One is we haven't finished doing the particle system right, but the other one is that the material is actually not quite finished. So I'm going to go into one of these so we can get up the water material. And what's kind of weird is you get all these blackness, because unfortunately the glass kind of tries to be too physically accurate. So like if you get a lot of bounces, it kind of creates these like dark spaces. So to get rid of that, we're going to ask it, so like if it has too many bounces going on in there, just make it transparent. Don't mess with the glass. So to do that, we're going to say, okay, so how many bounces we're going to have? We're going to put an input, and then we're going to do a light path. So we're going to use ray depth here. And then for that, we're going to use converter math. Converter math. And so we're going to say, if the ray length is greater than, let's say 2, so if it bounces more than 2 times, we're going to have that become transparent. So to do that, we're going to add a transparent shader. Transparent. And then we're going to mix those. Mix shader. And then we're going to use this as the mix shader. No, I think I said ray depth, right? There we go. So we lost a lot of that transparency. All right, hey, this is Jeremy speaking of the future. Clearly I screwed that up. It should be ray depth greater than 2, But it seemed to work okay, so I'll just leave with it. The other render I did had that normal, had the ray depth greater than 2. All right, so now we got our water particles here, and I kind of figured out the vertex group thing that was bugging me so much. Apparently, whenever you change the particle settings, it changes your vertex group. So if you hit 4,000, I hit 4,100, it'll tweak things. So it looks like the water's a little big, so let's bring it out to 0.21, and then we may have a bunch of these things, but they actually don't look too bad. So here you can see kind of it just feels really wet. Maybe take it down to like 3,800. There you go. And actually these are bugging me a bit, but let's we don't want any velocity, so we want that 0. Oh, that was it. Okay, so we just want to take that velocity. We just want to take that down, so they're all kind of facing the same way. As you see, you can still keep just tweaking these, but yeah, here we got a nice like little wet thing. Little wet thing there. It feels, fresh and stuff. So with the render, I'm actually going to keep it at 50% because I've already done another render. But so what we're going to do to separate it, last time we used the UV and we separated the can because the can had UV and everything else didn't. But this time we're going to use render layers and what's called the object index. So actually I'm going to sort everything, and I'm going to put all my lighting and my psych, I'm going to put on the lower layer. So we're going to put that down here. And we're going to turn it back on. We want it. And then actually I'm going to move the psych over to this layer here. So we can just, we can turn on, turn off, and turn the can on, turn the can off. Great. Okay. So actually I'm going to, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the object index. So everything starts at an index of 0, but for the can, I'm going to make that, use the object index here, pass index, and make that an index of 1. All those little water bits, I'm going to have to do that one at a time, aren't I? We're going to do index at 2. So if you edit things here, they'll edit in the drops. So if you edit the pass, or, if I take this, scale this like up a lot, like you can see that actually gets reflected in the water over here. So I'm going to undo that, but you get the idea. So these are all 2. We're going to create what we call render layers. And the render layers does different layers. It renders different layers differently. But it renders them whole, so we need the pass index to figure out what the alpha channel is. So we go to our render settings, and we're going to do one render layer, and we're going to call it background. And we're going to do another one, and we're going to call that can. And then I'm actually doing a third layer. And then, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this can. I'm going to hit Shift D, and I'm going to move that can onto this layer here. And then on that layer there, so we're just going to take that isolated can, and we're going to turn off the particle system. So we just have a clean can. So I'm going to go back to my render, and then I'm going to call this no drops. And that's going to be, has to use the entire scene, but I'm just going to use this layer. And I'm actually going to go ahead and exclude the main layer. So the can, I want the scene for all of those, but I only want the can layer. And then for the background, I want the scene to be everything. We won't exclude that main can, but we want only the background. Okay. Oh, and then so now we gotta set up our passes. So I'll keep a UV pass, but we definitely want the object index, and we want them on all 3 passes. Although we don't really need it on the background, but we'll just do it anyway just to be consistent. So let's just make sure we got that right. So background is using all these layers, but only rendering this one. Can is using all these layers, but only rendering this one, and no drops. Oh, and then excluding this one. No drops is using all these layers, excluding this one, and only rendering this one. Perfect. Okay, cool. So now let's go to our render settings. As you said, sampling is basically your render quality. I'm going to bring that up to 100. I'm not going to do a super high res render here because I want to get this done. And going to performance, I'm actually bring these up to 128 so I can use, because that's a good thing to do when you're using the graphics card. All right, so I hit render and I'm speeding it up while it goes through it. It takes a little longer in real life. So you can see this is our render result. So now we're going to use the compositor to get those 3 images. So what we do is we go into the compositor, hit use nodes. And so this is obviously the background. And so we're just going to keep that as the background. That's fine. So we're going to duplicate this. And then so we can select which one we want. So this is the can. And we can do that. But obviously we have the background in there. We don't want that background in there. So we use converter, ID mask. And then we grab the index OB there. So ID mask index OB. And then since the can is index 1, we can plug that into alpha. And we already noticed a problem because the water is index 2 and the can is index 1. So we're losing the water. It's kind of funny actually. But we can fix that. So we can just duplicate this. As I said, once we go here, if it's index 2, the water, that's just the water. So that's just the water there. So to combine them, we can go into math. We can just add them together since they work like that. And then you have, yeah, there you have the can with the water. And the third value that we're going to use is the can without the water. So that's just not background. So no drops. So no drops. So if we take that as ID mask 1 for the can, and we bring the image in there, bring the image here, and then we bring the index DOB here, ID value here. So there we have the can. So you can see we have the can without drops. We have the can with drops. And we have the background without any alpha. And we can actually combine all 3 right here in Blender, which is very useful when you're animating. And I can obviously export the 3 of those and use it in Photoshop. But so I'll actually show you how to do that. So we're going to take the we'll just do it with drops. So you take the image with the drops, and then I'm going to do a mix node. Yep, we're going to do a mix node. So we're going to mix these 2 images. Instead of mixing them, normally you could do 50%, 50%, but we'll use this vector, this alpha as the mix, and then of course that's backwards. So boop. So there you go. And then what's kind of cool is since this is isolated, you can lighten that background. So you can add RGB curves between those, and it'll just affect the background. So I can make it go to white, and then make it go maybe a little bit darker, but then kind of isolate the highlight there. Yeah, there you go. So that's kind of what you want to do. So there you go. You get it. And I'm going to show you. I actually exported a much higher res render before when I was testing this. So I brought this all into Photoshop here. So here we have the can itself, and here we have the background, and here we have the wet can. But I also did the can, and then you can add water to it as well. So it can be an option. And this is an overall curve I made, and then this is a curve I made. I'm going to put the wet can back. It's a curve I made to the background. So you can kind of lighten it like that. So you don't want that shadow there. You want it to isolate on a page or something. You can do that. And so that's it. That's how you render the nice product shot of the can. There you have it.